Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Gotham Rogues. In this video we spotlight Anne Hathaway's Catwoman from the movie The Dark Knight Rises. It's another episode of Batman movie villains, and we've now reached the penultimate rogue, Catwoman, played by Anne Hathaway in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises from 2012. In the movie, we meet Selina Kyle, a cat burglar and master thief who's been hired by shady businessman Roland Daggett to acquire the fingerprints of Bruce Wayne, played by Christian Bale of course. In return, Selina will be given a device called a clean slate, which is supposedly capable of erasing a person's criminal record and other data. Selina is planning to use this to disappear off the grid and start fresh, leaving her old life of crime behind. Little does she know though that her mission is part of a sinister plot orchestrated by the League of Shadows to destroy Gotham City. However, when she does eventually discover this, Selina begins to have second thoughts about her involvement in this evil scheme. So in Batman Returns, we got a Catwoman who was very different from the source material. I am actually a fan of the Tim Burton version of the character, but let's be honest, that Catwoman is almost Catwoman in name only. With Nolan's take, it's basically the exact opposite. She's never called Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises, but she's portrayed with most of the typical Catwoman characteristics we know and love. She does lack some of the superficial ones, yes, like for example the whole cat theme. That's obviously the most jarring one. Neither does Selina use a whip, her most iconic weapon in all other media. But despite that, Anne Hathaway's Catwoman is very much Catwoman. She acts just like the character would in the comics, and she has the same type of personality. Unlike in Batman Returns, Selina is also depicted as a master thief with a rough background. So if you look past the surface, this version is like taken straight out of the page of the comics. I think she especially personifies the 90s Jim Ballant era Catwoman. That was a Catwoman who was morally grey. She stole and hurt people, but never once who didn't deserve it in the first place. Selina would often also commit good deeds and never acted as a true villain. That is essentially what we get in the movie. I've said it several times in the past. The 90s era Catwoman is my favorite. So that gives you a pretty good clue as to how I feel about the Hathaway version. Obviously I love it. It's a perfect adaptation, at least the way the character is written. We do of course have the issue with the superficial aspects. She's not called Catwoman, just Selina Kyle, she doesn't hang around with stray cats, and she doesn't even wield a whip. I can definitely understand why some fans would dislike this take because of that. I personally don't have any major issues with it, but I gotta wonder why Nolan went in that direction. Yeah, I know, the Dark Knight trilogy is all about realism, but we do have a guy dressed like a bat and another one dressed like a clown. Would a woman with a cat theme really be that weird? I don't think so. They could've just said that Selina was inspired by Batman to adopt an animal gimmick. It works in the comics. Batman did inspire the Joker in The Dark Knight, so why not more? Of course, in the movie all Selina wants is to disappear, so with that said, maybe it wouldn't have made all that much sense if she pranced around as Catwoman. That would kind of attract some attention. Honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about the lack of cat with this Catwoman. Like I said, I don't think it's a major issue, but at the same time, it probably could have been incorporated somehow. It's actually funny how Nolan really made sure to write the character accurately to the comics, yet at the same time went out of his way to exclude anything cat-related. Although, according to that computer monitor of Bruce Wayne's, Selina was referred to as the Cat, like in her first appearance in 1940. Why didn't they use that name in the dialogue? My guess is it was just meant as an Easter egg to the fans. As for Anne Hathaway's performance, I think it's just fantastic. She's cocky, energetic, seductive, basically all the things Selina Kyle should be. Hathaway also excellently portrays the street smarts and cynicism of the character, something you wouldn't really believe her capable of just by looking at her. Anne Hathaway does have a bit of an innocent look to her, at least in my opinion, so originally I did find it to be quite an odd casting choice, but she was able to pull it off just perfectly, for the most part anyway. I have always found that oops part to be a bit cringy for some reason. So let's talk about the visual design of this Catwoman. If there's one thing I'm not a big fan of with this particular Selina Kyle, it's her outfit. I suppose there's nothing wrong with the jumpsuit itself, it's really the mask and the goggles that does it for me. It's a very boring look. It makes sense of course though with Nolan's realism, but that doesn't mean it's a good visual. I also think the idea of the goggles resembling cat ears when flipped back is kinda silly. Nolan really wanted nothing to do with cats, so he came up with this goofy way to at least give it a nod. It's so typical of modern comic book movies. They gotta give a reasonable explanation for everything. Oh no, she's not wearing cat ears, it's just looks like she is when flipping back the goggles. To me, these excuses and explanations for outlandish superhero outfits and concepts are actually sillier than the goofy source material itself. Am I making sense here? I don't really know what Nolan should have done instead though, seeing as his Catwoman couldn't wear a full head mask with pointy ears on it. She isn't Catwoman after all, she's Selina Kyle. So in conclusion, I think that this is a great adaptation of Catwoman. Yeah, she lacks the cat theme, and I'm not crazy about the visual design, but the characterization being so spot on more than makes up for that. This version may fail in the superficial aspects, but it perfectly captures the essence of what Catwoman is all about. Next up on Batman movie villains, it's the final rogue, Marion Cotillard's Talia al Ghul, yet again from The Dark Knight Rises. It's the last episode of this series. Well, the last proper episode. A lot of you have asked my opinion of the Suicide Squad rogues, but since they'll all probably appear in more movies, I can't really cover them. They're not complete, you know what I mean? I may complain about something that might get fixed in a future movie. However, realizing the high demand, I decided to make a bonus Batman movie villains episode, in which I lump all the Suicide Squad rogues together, so I'll give brief opinions on all of them in the same video. This only applies to the Bat rogues though, so no Captain Boomerang, Enchantress or El Diablo. In the future, when we have more movies, and if I'm still doing this of course, Batman movie villains proper may return. But anyway, for now, stay tuned for Talia and the squad, and as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.